In a landmark decision, the Supreme Court has struck down the legal foundation of the Trump administration's sweeping tariffs, reshaping the future of American trade policy. The ruling, delivered on a brisk November morning, curtails the president's power to impose broad tariffs without explicit congressional approval. This marks a return to a more traditional Congress-led approach to foreign commerce. The case, American Institute for International Steel versus United States, brought together businesses and industry groups who argued the tariffs crippled them and exceeded executive authority. In a decisive 7-2 vote, the justices agreed, finding the statutes used for the tariffs were stretched beyond their intent. The decision signals the end of an era of aggressive protectionism and offers hope to industries hurt by trade wars and disrupted supply chains. Supporters of the tariffs warn the ruling weakens U.S. leverage in global negotiations, while critics hail it as a victory for workers, consumers, and the rule of law. The debate over free trade versus protectionism continues, but the court has shifted power back to Congress. The future of American trade will now be written on Capitol Hill, not by executive order. Tariffs are taxes on imported goods designed to make foreign products more expensive and protect domestic industries. While governments may use tariffs to raise revenue, their main purpose is often protectionism, shielding key sectors from foreign competition. For example, a 25% tariff on foreign cars makes American-made vehicles more attractive to buyers, but the economic effects ripple far beyond simple price tags. Importers pay the tariff, but the cost is passed down the supply chain, ultimately raising prices for consumers. Tariffs on steel, for instance, increase costs for manufacturers, who then raise prices on finished goods like washing machines. Trade wars can erupt as countries retaliate, imposing their own tariffs and disrupting global supply chains. This tit-for-tat escalation often reduces trade, increases uncertainty, and hurts exporters in both countries. Proponents argue tariffs level the playing field and protect national security, but most economists say they distort markets and raise costs for everyone. The consensus, while some industries may benefit, tariffs generally stifle innovation and hurt consumers. Free trade, despite its challenges, is seen as the path to greater prosperity. The Supreme Court's decision may signal a shift back toward this approach. The real test will be how Congress balances protection and openness in the years ahead. The Trump administration's trade policy marked a sharp break from decades of free trade, relying heavily on tariffs to protect American industries. The goal: reduce the trade deficit and force trading partners to negotiate better deals. Tariffs were imposed using rarely invoked laws, like Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, which allows tariffs for national security reasons. Steel and aluminum imports from both rivals and allies were targeted, sparking controversy over what truly constitutes a security threat. The administration also used Section 301 to levy tariffs on hundreds of billions in Chinese goods, aiming to pressure Beijing on intellectual property and subsidies. The strategy: make foreign goods more expensive, encourage U.S. manufacturing, and reshore supply chains. This Fortress America vision sought to insulate key industries from global competition. Tariffs became the main weapon in a broader push for economic nationalism. Supporters saw this as a way to restore American strength. Critics warned it risked isolation and higher costs. The approach fundamentally altered America's relationship with the global economy. The Supreme Court's ruling now forces a reconsideration of this protectionist stance. The future will depend on whether Congress doubles down or charts a new course. The era of unilateral tariff wars may be over, but the debate over America's economic identity is just beginning. The world is watching to see what comes next. The Trump-era tariffs had sweeping economic consequences, many of them unintended. Studies showed that U.S. importers and consumers bore most of the costs, as higher prices rippled through industries from autos to appliances. Despite the tariffs, the U.S. trade deficit in goods actually grew, as companies shifted supply chains to countries like Vietnam and Mexico, a phenomenon known as trade diversion. Retaliatory tariffs from other nations hit American exporters hard, especially farmers. China, once a top market for U.S. soybeans and pork, imposed steep tariffs, causing prices and farm incomes to plummet. The government spent billions in aid to offset these losses, effectively subsidizing the fallout from its own policy. While some jobs were created in protected industries like steel, more were lost elsewhere due to higher costs and lost export markets. The net effect: a slight drag on the U.S. economy and a small reduction in overall employment. The tariffs reshuffled global trade patterns but failed to deliver the promised revival of American manufacturing. The Supreme Court's decision now opens the door to reversing these trends. The challenge will be to repair the damage and restore confidence in U.S. trade policy. The numbers tell a cautionary tale about the risks of economic nationalism. As the dust settles, policymakers must weigh the real costs and benefits of protectionism. The data is clear. Tariffs are no silver bullet. The legal battle over Trump's tariffs centered on a core question: how much power does the president have over trade? Plaintiffs argued the administration overreached, using national security as a pretext for economic protectionism. They claimed Section 232 was never meant to justify sweeping tariffs on allies, and that such broad discretion violated the Constitution's separation of powers. The government countered that the law gave the president wide latitude, and that economic health is part of national security. The Supreme Court was asked to decide whether Congress had handed the executive too much unchecked authority. The Supreme Court sided with the challengers, sharply limiting the president's power to impose tariffs under national security laws. The majority ruled that national security must be tied to a direct, credible threat, not used as a catch-all for economic goals. The decision set a new standard. The executive must show a clear link between an import and a real defense risk. The court's 7-2 majority, spanning ideological lines, emphasized the case was about constitutional limits, not economic policy. Justice Gorsuch's concurrence warned against unchecked executive power, while the dissent argued for deference to the president in security matters. The ruling reasserts Congress's primary role in trade policy. It also signals that future presidents will face strict scrutiny if they try to use national security as a blanket justification for tariffs. The balance of power in trade has shifted decisively back to the legislative branch. The Supreme Court's decision sent shockwaves through the economy. Manufacturers reliant on global supply chains welcomed the end of costly tariffs, anticipating lower input prices and renewed investment. Wall Street responded with a surge, as markets cheered the return of stability and predictability in trade policy. Stocks of multinational firms and transport companies soared, while domestic steel and aluminum producers braced for renewed foreign competition. Some fear plant closures and layoffs in protected industries, but others see a chance for adaptation and innovation. For farmers, the ruling offers hope that retaliatory tariffs will soon be lifted, reopening vital export markets. The decision is a lifeline for sectors battered by the trade war. The economic landscape is shifting, with winners and losers on both Main Street and Wall Street. The next chapter will be written as industries adjust to a new era of global competition. For most Americans, tariffs meant higher prices on everyday goods, costs often hidden in the checkout line. The Supreme Court's decision promises relief, as import taxes on items like electronics, clothing, and appliances are rolled back. Studies showed these costs were passed almost entirely to consumers, hitting lower and middle-income families hardest. Tariffs acted as a regressive tax, taking a bigger bite out of working-class budgets. The removal of tariffs is, in effect, a small tax cut for millions. Price drops won't happen overnight, but as supply chains adjust, households should see real savings. The ruling is a direct win for consumers, especially those struggling with inflation. The benefits will ripple across the economy, lowering the cost of living and boosting confidence. For families, the end of the tariff era means more money in their pockets. The Supreme Court's decision delivers one of the most tangible benefits to everyday Americans. The Supreme Court's ruling forces a national rethink of America's role in the global economy. By shifting trade authority back to Congress, the decision opens the door to new strategies and alliances. The immediate challenge: negotiate the removal of retaliatory tariffs and address issues like intellectual property theft through traditional means. The political debate over free trade versus protectionism is reignited, with policymakers seeking a balance that protects workers without isolating the U.S. The future may involve stronger adjustment programs, workforce training, and trade deals with tougher labor and environmental standards. The path forward is uncertain, but the legal boundaries are now clear. America stands at a crossroads: return to broad trade liberalization, or forge a new middle ground. The choices made now will shape U.S. economic leadership for a generation.